That could come up. What is your objection handler if you were to get that?
Mm, well, look, Mr. Seller, I understand. Well, I would probably go into more like, well, Mr. Seller, the NAR, the National Association of Realtor Settlement, basically says that we can no longer market or promote the buyer's commission when we list the home for sale. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not paying for the buyer's commission. Um,
Oh, what
so
do you mean by that?
what do I mean by that? Meaning, look, if there's three homes for sale that's similar to yours in the same area and the same price point, if the other two listing was offering 2.5% to the buyer's agent and you're not
Mm,
offering nothing, I mean, if you were the
mm.
buyer's agent showing the home, what's the likeliness of them trying to push to write an offer on yours?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not gonna get paid, I go to the one that would actually pay me. So
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
Mr. Seller, I mean, at the end of the day, your goal is to sell this house and move to Texas, and your ultimate goal is to net you the most money, correct?
I mean, I certainly don't want the least. Do you think that'll hurt my chances in getting the property sold at all?
Sorry, one more time. I couldn't hear the first part.
Do you think that'll hurt my chances of getting the property sold?
It wouldn't hurt, but it would put you in a mm, it would put you in a challenging situation, right? We're gonna have to negotiate with the buyer's agent on their commission rate as well. So that's gonna come into play as well.
Oh, what do you mean by that?
Mm, sorry, I'm a little stuck on this one.
So I think we need to know that the sellers can still offer concessions, although you
Right.
can't state it clearly, and that it could still be written in the realtor remarks, as I've heard. So that's allowed.
Wait, so you're
And
saying that
so
we can put an agent remarks in the MLS saying to pay buyer
that's
commission?
right.
Oh,
You
interesting.
could
'Cause I
still
thought,
do
I
that.
thought,
Yeah.
I thought I heard the
Yeah.
opposite, that we cannot, and we have to
I guess it's state by
do
state.
its own
I
listing.
what I've heard is that you can't advertise it, clearly on the MLS, but you can certainly write it somewhere, and it'll come through, buyer concession, if they were to
Mm,
negotiate a credit at the end of the day. So what you're really trying to say in that conversation is that if everybody else is still offering commissions to the buyer's agent, it kind of puts you at a
mm,
disadvantage.
correct.
And you certainly don't want to be left out in the crowd. So, this actually puts you in the playing field in terms of being number one and number two. And you do want the most exposure possible, wouldn't you? So I probably play it that way. But again, these are just mock situations. Nobody's ever gone through it realistically. So yeah, this is good. No, you can't mention compensation representation by agent or
Mm.
seller. Interesting. Okay. So then how would you play that? Then you couldn't write it anywhere, but you could
Hey,
say it
John.
verbally. Yeah, go
Can you hear
ahead.
me, John? Yeah. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
yep, it's in paragraph 58H. Paragraph 58H double I it specifically says that compensation can't be
Morning.
mentioned by either agent or seller. I thought it could, but it can't. So, the compensation for the agent is going to be um, uh, a credit can be offered by the seller for 2.5% or 3% or 2% or whatever figure you can mention that. Um, but you're going to have to, go through the same commission defense that you always go through, because the only reason we offer a commission to the buyer's agent to begin with, the only reason we ever did was to incentivize them to bring us a qualified buyer. So in that, absolutely nothing's changed. It's absolutely the same as always. The only thing different is we can't list it in the multiple listings. So the agent's going to have to call me and say, Tim, are you going to be paying commission? And I'm going to say, yes, seller's going to be paying commission. And then when they write their offer, they will send over a commission agreement with the offer, which the seller will sign. Now, Mr. Seller, what you're going to have to do what's a little bit different here is we're going to sign a commission agreement for them in advance. Maybe there's going to be an addendum, sidebar. Maybe there's an addendum or something. I'm not going to shower. No. So there's going to be an addendum that you're going to have to draw with the seller up front that states they're willing to pay the buyer's commission.
Yeah,
whatever percent.
Which I would propose or suggest, guys. Like, okay. So I've noticed, I don't know if you have, over the last 4 or 5 days, there's lots of emotion, lots of internal tension. You know how many texts and emails I got? Right? Now, hopefully what I'm about to share with you will quell some of that. Okay? Because those who can remain calm while everybody else is freaking out make better decisions. Emotions cloud logic. Okay? So the first question is, how did we get to this point? How did it happen? Well, the way it happened, I'm sure you guys have been paying attention somewhat, because we're actively selling real estate, so we read like little snippets like every once in a while. There was a lawsuit, and it stated that the way that real estate is being conducted, that we were inflating commissions, that it was like a conspiracy to keep commissions high. That's how it started. Then you may have heard that there were some big brokerage firms that settled. Then on March 15th, right, NAR settled for like $400 million. That's how we got to this point. Okay. And what I'm aware of is in that settlement, there were some rule changes, which, by the way, haven't been agreed on. So it could change, things could evolve. Let's operate under the assumption that it goes through. Couple rule changes that you need to be clear on. The first one is you can no longer offer any compensation in the multiple listing service in terms of a co-broke. Okay. And in the MLS field, because agents are very intuitive and very kind of fucking entrepreneurial, any field where you can enter some sort of compensation will be taken out. Now, it does not say that you can no longer offer compensation. What it states is that you can't put it in the multiple listing service. So in other words, this isn't a major detour as to what we've already been doing. All it does is state that you can no longer put it in the multiple listing service. Okay. Rule change number 2 is that on your brokerage's website, not MLS, on your brokerage's website for your brokerage's listings, you can put compensation of some degree, whatever you're going to be offering out. You can do that on your own, like on your brokerage's listings on their own site. So being with a firm that has a very huge kind of, presence and a huge site where you can put compensation is allowed. Number 3, if you work with a buyer, you must have a buyer broker's agreement signed. Now, I know everybody's freaking out about this. Do you know the only reason we haven't been doing that? Because it hasn't been mandatory. Because let me ask you a question. Would you, Michael Ireland, go list a property without a listing agreement?
No.
Because it's mandatory. Do you understand? So this is not a huge change from what we've already been doing. It's just that now you will need an agreement if you work with a buyer. Okay. So what do I think we have to do to pivot to deal with it? Well, the first is there will be different forms of compensation for different forms of representation. Listen to what I just said to you. Different forms of compensation for different forms of representation. So, on the listing, because we're all about tactical information. What do you need to be saying? How do you need to be presenting? You guys are accustomed to going into a listing agreement, or a listing presentation. You actually have a presentation. You demonstrate your value, and then you ask and negotiate a professional fee. And don't give me this shit that you guys don't negotiate, because you fucking do. Because all commissions are what? Negotiable. Okay. So, as such, the way that conversation is going to go is the following. Okay? I've been telling people to present with different options and choices for like 2 years. So let's say there's a silver package, a gold package, and a platinum package. For the silver package, that type of representation, here's what you're going to get, which is all the basic shit. You know, photos, be like flyers, maybe like one open house a month, or maybe like, you know, like a little video. And that has a particular fee associated with it. Then for the gold package, that has all the thing that silver has in it, but it also has Matterport. It also has open houses until the home sells. It also has, like, you add things of value. And then for the platinum package, which is the full Monty, like a guaranteed home sale, that includes everything that silver and gold has. But then what I also say to them is like, look, I will pay for the property to be appraised before we put it on the market. I will pay for an inspection to be done. And I will credit you $1,000 for anything that you have to fix when that inspection is done. We'll pay for the home to be professionally cleaned before we put it on the market. Perhaps there's staging. And that has a fee associated with it. And then I ask a question. So based on what you guys are looking to accomplish, based on the time frame you'd like to make this move happen in, which I know you shared with me, you'd like to be moved in the next 120 days, which means we have to be under contract in the next 60, because it takes 45 to 60 days to close. Which one of these options do you think would serve you and your family best? And then shut up. Then we come to an agreement on that on our side. Now what needs to happen is we need to explain the economics and the advantages and disadvantages of offering out some sort of concession or compensation to the buyer's agent. Which, by the way, we've been doing this shit for a long time. At least I know I have. If somebody says to me, hey, you know, Ginny, I want a lower professional fee. And you're like, okay, well, the listing side for us to represent you is blank, whatever that is, 2.5%, 3%, whatever it is that you want to work for, because they're all negotiable, okay? So the question is what are we going to offer out to another agent if they can find this buyer that's ready, willing, and able to purchase? Because the professional fee is a tool that we use to market the property. Can I explain to you what I mean? Guys, we've been doing this before. So now the way that conversation is going to go is like, okay, great. So now that we've came to an agreement in terms of, you know, the professional fee and, you know, providing, you know, for that fee, now it's time to have a conversation with regards to concessions or compensation for the buyers and the buyer's agents. Now, before we have that conversation, first, what I'd like to do is to share with you that the professional fee is one of the tools that we use to market the property in terms of what we offer out. And I'd like to go over scenarios with you so that way you can be clear on how that works. Would that be okay? Yes. So let's say that, you know, there are 10 properties for sale in your price point at any given time. And let's say 7 of them are offering out some sort of concession or compensation towards the buyer's agent and their fee. And 3 of them are offering nothing. Let me ask you a question. If you were a full-time commission-based salesperson, which properties do you think you'd be more excited about showing and selling your client? Be quiet. And they're going to be like, well, the one's offering something. Yeah, and why is that? Well, because it would increase the chances that I would get paid. Exactly. So just by you saying that demonstrates that you're beginning to realize that what we offer out is 100% a tool that we use to market the property. And it dictates not only the speed with which we get the property sold and how long it takes and how much we end up getting. Because let me ask you a question. If we want to net the most possible, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, how are we going to accomplish that? By limiting the exposure in some way or broadening the exposure? And then be quiet. And they'll be like, well, broaden the exposure. Exactly. So now what I'd like to do is to go over with you the options that we have at our disposal. So that way you can decide what you feel is best based on your particular situation and what you're looking to accomplish and why. So that way you can choose what you feel is best. And whatever you decide, I will support you 100%. Guys, you do not need to defend. You need to explain. You do not need to defend. Most of us get into this defense mode. Don't you know, and I'm fucking worth it and blah, blah, blah. Like, don't do that shit. You need to explain and educate the economics and the advantages and disadvantages and how they work. So the first option that we have at our disposal, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is that we offer out nothing. Okay, no concessions, no form of compensation for the buyer's agent. In doing so, we, again, inhibit the exposure in some way, and it could end up affecting how many showings we get and how long it takes to sell. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. The second option that we have at our disposal is that we can offer out a concession of some sort. Because I'm sure you've noticed like these rule changes, the news. And what has happened is we can no longer offer out compensation in the multiple listing service, which is the way it used to be. We can still offer concessions in the multiple listing service. So what I see is customary in this price point is somewhere between $10,000 to $12,000 in a concession. And what we're doing here is we're giving them basically money towards either their closing costs or towards compensating their agent. Does that make sense to you? And the third option that we have at our disposal is we can offer out a percentage of an agreed upon purchase and sales price with an acceptable offer towards the buyer's agent's professional fee. And we would just not put that in the multiple listing service. When agents call our office or they speak to me, we just let them know. And when the offer comes in, it'll be, part of the negotiation. Now, I need you to know that my intention is to protect the value of property and get you as much money as we possibly can. So my question is based on what you're looking to accomplish and why, based on the time frame you'd like to make this happen in, which again, we need to be under contract in the next, 30 to 60 days if we want to be closed by the time frame that you want. Which one of these options do you think would serve you and your family best, would help you net the most and do it in the most quick amount of time? And then shut the fuck up. And let them decide. Don't defend. Explain. Is this making sense? Drop in the comments if this is fucking making sense to you.
Aaron, in your opinion, why do people defend rather than explain?
Because they've been taught to defend, and they're still operating in an environment in which they have a complete monopoly of information. That is not the world we live in anymore. Okay? Taking the stance where John Tsai's, well, you should pay me because I'm worth it, is dumb. Look at me. It's dumb. You need to give people options. And look, okay, I was explaining to coaching clients, when you get on a plane, you have fucking options. You could sit in the back and there's a fee associated with that. You can get an aisle seat and that's a little bit more. You can get one of those seats that have a little bit of extra room on the exit. It's a little bit more. And you can sit up front and guess what? It's fucking more. Does anybody have a problem with that? No, we're perfectly fine with it. We know when we walk by those people in first class, they already have their munchies and their fucking water when I'm just getting on. We know they paid a bunch of money to get on and do that. And we're perfectly fine with it. So it's like an immature thing to like defend, because if you demonstrate massive value, you don't have to defend anything. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how that conversation is going to have to go, and you're going to have to get really good at it. You're going to have to get good at explaining the economics of the situation, and you're going to have to get good at explaining the advantages of offering out some sort of compensation and explaining to them how we can go about doing it and how it's in their best interest. Okay? Second thing that needs to happen is part of the rule changes is if you work with buyers, you will need a buyer brokerage agreement signed. So essentially, again, I want you to think in your mind, you would never take a listing without a listing agreement. And the reason is because it's mandatory. Now it is mandatory to have a basically, let's call it a listing agreement, which is a buyer brokerage agreement, if you work with buyers. That's it. And if you're going to do that, I believe there will be different representation for different forms of compensation. So in other words, let's say somebody calls Tim off one of his yard signs and says, hey, I want to look at this property. And he's going to run out and go show it to him. There will probably be a 24, 48 hour, 72 hour, 1 week buyer brokerage agreement for that specific property with language about that specific property. And maybe that's a flat rate because I'm not having to fucking drive around like 10 times and like, for 6 months and show them 50 properties. Right? And I'm going to have a formal presentation for buyers with the same way that you could explain on the listing side. different forms of representation for different forms of compensation. So in other words, here's the basic form. Here's the silver package. This is the shit you get. It's very basic, and it's not for an extended period of time. And here's the rate associated with that. Maybe that's a flat rate. Then here's the silver package. Here's what you get. Here's all the features and amenities. Here's all the benefits. Here's all the value proposition that we're going to provide. All my staff that you have at their resources. Here's all the stuff that I'll do for you. And then here's the premium package. And here's what that is. And you're going to have to explain to them how it works compensation-wise. So you know how that would sound is like, listen, very excited to have the opportunity to be of assistance and to help you with the sale. What I'd like to do now is to go over with you how this process works and how I get compensated. Would that be okay? You think they're going to be like, no, Mark, I don't want to fucking hear that. And then what you're going to do is say like, okay, great. So the way I get compensated can happen in different ways. So the professional fee for helping represent you exclusively is this, whatever that is. And I believe because it's entrepreneurial and it's capitalism, we'll see all different types of shit. Maybe it's a flat rate or a percentage, whichever one's less. Maybe it's whatever it is, okay? There's going to be all different types of stuff. But here's what the rate is. And the way I get compensated is multiple different ways. One way is if the seller and the listing agent provide compensation for me as the buyer's agent. Okay? And if that happens, great. They take care of the compensation. The second way is if they offer out some sort of concession. And if they're offering out some sort of concession, then that'll help you with some of the costs associated with buying, and that'll free up capital, to pay the professional fee. The third way is on the very outside chance, because we're not seeing it happen that frequently, but on the outside chance they offer out nothing, and we're not able to negotiate a concession or something in the purchase and sales agreement, then it would be up to you to compensate me in terms of the professional fee. Now, I want to be clear. My intention is to negotiate for you the best possible price or a concession of some sort to limit your exposure to having to pay the professional fee. Does that make sense to you? Do you feel comfortable working in that capacity? Excellent. I just need you to go ahead and sign this for me, please. Does this make sense to everybody? Guys, that's all this is. Do you know what in commercial real estate, they've been doing this shit for, that's when you make an LOI, part of the offer is the compensation that they want. It's part of the negotiation. So this isn't like massively, I want you to really hear me. This is not massively different than what we've already been doing. And what it provides us as an industry to do is to level up skills. Skills, guys. The skill of being able to present, the skill of being able to add value, the skill of being able to articulate clearly and concisely the economics, the skill of being able to articulate the disadvantages and advantages of offering out some sort of compensation or concession, the skill of being able to explain to buyers what specifically it is that we do. And it's our fault, guys. I need you to understand. With fucking reality TV and $1 million listing agents and all, they think we make tons of money and don't do shit. Because we haven't explained it well. Is this clear to everybody? Is everybody clear on this?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Any questions, comments, concerns, observations, hallucinations, emotional overloads? Like, where are we at?
I'm sick of the conversation. Fuck.
No, and here's what's true, though, John. And here's what I would suggest, okay? Is I really have empathy. Like, I'm not saying you don't, but like, I understand. 65% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Agents aren't any different. The vast majority of agents are just trying to do deals to get by. Like, I get it. And I understand why it would cause internal consternation. I understand why it would cause kind of doubt or fear or worry. Like, I understand. But I need you to understand that if you're feeling doubt or fear or worry, there's only two reasons why. One is you don't understand what's happening. Because ignorance equals fear, knowledge equals confidence. Number two, you're afraid that this is going to expose your lack of skill. Okay? You'd be like, internally, like, shaken up by this. I don't understand what's happening because it's not a huge pivot. It's really not. because we've been doing this shit basically very similarly. We're just taking like a little bit of a detour, and we're getting to the same place though. And B, I just maybe am not that skilled, and I'm scared that it's going to expose that. Because if your only skill was opening doors, it's a problem. If it's because it's speed, because I can get there faster, no, it's a problem. If your only skill is like, you know, you do what's best for the client, like it's a problem. The agents of the future are the following, okay? Number one, they're highly skilled salespeople. Number two is they think like business people, not salespeople. Number three, they understand media very well, because let me ask you a question. If you're known as the hyper-local expert, if you're a hyper-local expert who knows what they're doing and does deals all the time and has integrity, is that going to help you preserve professional fees? Yes. And number four, they're vertically integrated. They have multiple ways of earning cash other than commissions. Meaning they can earn commissions, they can earn equity, they can earn rev share. Like there's different ways to earn money.
JP says, can you practice a script where the buyer's agent is having to negotiate the commission? JP, do you mean like when I'm bringing out my buyer's agency contract about to have them sign, and then they're like, oh, I don't want to pay you 2.5%. I want to pay you 1%. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So, but I need you to understand, JP, the part of this, like you're going to get to this place.
JP, your Wi-Fi sucks.
So, yeah, your Wi-Fi is not working. So, the reason you're going to get to this place is because you haven't had a conversation up front. You're pre-qualified. You haven't discussed how you get compensated up front. That would be like working with a seller. You get an offer and they're like, wait a minute, I don't want to pay you. So what do you mean? We fucking talked about this and we signed an agreement already. You see what I'm saying? So it's backwards. And your frame of reference, you're thinking the way that you did it in the past, which is like somebody calls, you run over there, you want to write an offer and they're like, hey, I'm not going to fucking pay. You know what I mean? But you're going to have to explain that up front. So again, like if you meet somebody out at a property, you're going to need to, it's mandatory. You will need to get a buyer broker agreement signed and different forms of compensation for different forms of representation. If you're only going to show that one property, because look, would you get married to somebody you met like for fucking 10 minutes? No. Does it seem like a realistic expectation that somebody's gonna be like, yeah, dude, I'm gonna hire you for 6 months and I have no fucking idea who you are? No. So that agreement might be like 2 hours or a week, and it states like specifically for this property, if you come back and purchase this property within this time frame, then the professional fee will be this, and maybe that's a flat rate. Because I didn't have to, I didn't have to show them all these properties. I didn't have to do all this stuff. So the answer to your question is like, that is a result of an old way of doing it. At the same time, let's say it still does come up and they can say, hey, I don't want to pay you more than 1%. It's like, okay, great. Well, what I'm aware of is the professional fee for me to help you in this instance is this. So there's a few ways we can get to that. One is I can negotiate on your behalf a concession of some sort, or perhaps like a lower purchase and sales price. And in that way, I would be earning the professional fee. The second way is perhaps with our offer, the listing agent and the seller will offer some form of compensation to me. Great. The third way is you're willing to pay 1% and here's like the flat rate for me to help you, or here's the rate for me to help you. And you would be responsible for coming up with the difference. Does that make sense to you? Are you willing to proceed under those conditions? Do you think, like, guys, this is professionalism. This is like straightforwardness. And I don't think this is bad. I think that it elevates the industry. Like imagine going to like a doctor and you being like, I don't want to pay you fucking. It's like, okay, well, that's what it is.
Die.
or like an attorney, like, no, like I don't want to do this. Like, okay, well, that's what it is.
You guys probably unaware of this, but like everywhere else in the world besides North America does this way.
Mm-hmm.
The buyer has to pay the commission. So, I think it's just we forgot about it because we've been doing it in one way for so long that we just don't want to adapt to change. But change is coming. So
yeah, and like there's other countries who've been doing it this way for fucking a long time, guys. This isn't like this like radical like, oh my God, this has never been done before, and everything imploded and it all fell apart. Like, no, like France does it that way. Like, Germany, you know what I mean? Like all these different countries do it that way, and it's fine. What else we got? Questions, comments, concerns, observations, hallucinations, emotional overloads.
Emotional overload, I think, is the right one. But JP, are you able to speak? You want to actually role play with Aaron real time? I think it's Wi-Fi crapped out. All right, who else? Conventional loans with less than 10% down can only get a total credit of 3%. This includes credit to repair buyer's commission.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to see too, Jose, is I think we're going to see some product innovation as time progresses. Like, so, because again, this is like real time, like it's just fucking happening. So I think eventually my prediction will be is that we'll see some product innovation from a lending perspective. We perhaps could see where they allow like a certain percentage up to, but not to exceed a dollar amount to be kind of included in the loan in terms of like compensation. Like, you know, like I think things will happen and change real time. So we just need to keep paying attention. That's all. Because like we're talking about like rules as they exist right now, but like I don't think like I think they're subject to change.
Yeah. So I think that, and my voice is kind of gone, but I think that I've been meeting with sellers after that rule change, and even I have a contract with the county of Ventura, and the county of Ventura was like, yeah, we still want to pay buyers agents commissions because we want to incentivize other agents to bring us offers on our properties. So I think that the narrative has been like this for so long that it's been customary, that I think most sellers, it makes sense, because I'll walk into listing appointments and they'll be like, well, I heard that if I don't offer 3% or if I don't offer 2.5%, no one's going to want to show the property. Is that true, Jose? And then in some cases I may say, well, look, you could actually get away with 2%, or you can get away with 2.25, and you can get away with 2.5, and it won't be any difference. In some cases, I've had sellers that are like,
yeah,
look,
and it's that's.
In some cases, I've even had sellers where they're like, I only want to pay a fat fee of like 10% to the buyer side. So I think that the narrative is that sellers do understand that in order for them to get activity on their property, they offer some sort of compensation. So I'm personally under the assumption, and me, that on most of the listings that we have, I'm probably going to run into a couple knuckleheads that don't want to do it. But for a majority of the people, they're going to want to offer some sort of compensation, which if they do, that means that your negotiations with your buyer are kind of like wiped out because they offer some sort of negotiation. I also think that as agents, we have the opportunity to control the narrative as well, too, somewhat. You know, obviously there's going to be.
I think like people need to be very mindful about what they're saying and posting right now, because it's part of the narrative. And what I see happening, it's fucking emotional. And
I think agents are making it worse.
They're making it like clickbaity shit. It's like, well, you know, they think I don't do anything. Well, here's all the things I do for my money. It's like defending, and it's like the wrong fucking position, bro. So instead, like what Jose's saying is it's more education, being able to explain the economics and the disadvantages of not offering out. So that's a true statement. Mm-hmm. And if anything, truer now than it was before. Because before, compensation was like present, but now even more, if people can't see, and the main tool that we use to see properties, it's not located there, it's fucking true. If you don't offer out a concession or you don't incentivize, you have to be very careful with people, because it shapes behavior. And if you explain it in the way that I just did, bro, most people who have common sense and who have a sincere desire will be like, yeah, that makes sense to me. Excellent. So based on what you're looking to accomplish and why, which one of those options do you think would serve you best?
May I speak as a devil's advocate? I'm not a licensed agent. I do the marketing on our team. Yep. But in reference to what Jose said, my take on this is, I've been pushing Rick to offer this a lower commission to buyers, because the buyer finds the house. Buyer agent, the buyer finds the house. The agent doesn't find the house.
Yeah. So it's interesting because a couple things. Like somebody dropped in the chat, like, oh, do you think buyer's agents are going to like disappear? I don't, because they're just going to go to the listing agent. You know what's true? As a dominant listing agent, people have been coming directly to me for a long time. They come directly to Jose. It hasn't made all the buyer's agents disappear, guys. Okay, during when shit was hot, people were delivering pies to my fucking office to get like offers accepted, bro. You guys have all had somebody call you directly and think that they're going to get a better deal because they call you directly. That hasn't eroded buyer's agents. It didn't make them disappear. Now, the value proposition, to your point, Ginny, used to be access to information. But the internet changed that. Now it's not access to listings and access. They have access too. The value proposition, Ginny, needs to change. Do you understand? The services that I provide on the buy side needs to not be focused around, I can get you access to the best properties. No, that's not. That's like when agents post in their fucking feeds like pictures of homes. I'm like, guys, you realize how dumb that is? Everybody's seeing that online. Like, that's not valuable at all. Particularly when they're one-dimensional. They're not even videos. I'm like, guys, that is the dumbest thing you could be doing. Right? So I think, Jenny, it's the value proposition. Now, do I think, and the other thing I want everybody to be clear on, all of you motherfuckers have been working for reduced commissions for years. Do you know how I know? Because you work with HomeLight and Fast Expert and Dave Ramsey leads and fucking all these other things, Zillow, Flex, that have 30, 40% referral fees. Understand something. You have all been taking less commission. All of you. So why is this like fucking, you've been doing it already for a long time. So like, again, it's not a huge radical shift from what's already been happening. And people are like, oh, well, fucking agents are going to go away. Okay. In my market, I don't know if it's like your market, wherever you are on the fucking planet, up until March 15th, people had access to flat fee brokerages. They had access to discount brokers. They had access to the guy in town who does it for fucking 3.5%. Guys, how is this different? Tell me. It's not. It was all happening anyway. And we didn't disappear. Jose still takes listings at what he would like, the 5 or 6%. You know what I mean? Like, they've had these. You see what I'm saying? So I think, Ginny, the value proposition is what needs to change. So instead of just like, yeah, I run around and show you properties and I can give you access to the best properties, which is horseshit because you haven't been able to do that for a long time. Because the internet democratized that information. It took away that value proposition of a monopoly of information. Instead, it's like, yo, here's the services that I provide you with. Not just I do these things, but then also we have a relationship with a moving truck and I will pay for your fucking moving. Or we have a relationship with a short-term rental company where if you need us to stay in a place intermediate while you're preparing your home, you can stay there. Or you see what I'm saying? Like real value, guys. And that's not, you know what I think this does? This unleashes entrepreneurial creativity. We just got, because compensation was there, no matter, like it was just there and it was part of the rules, which is the whole reason why this happened. Now that that's been decoupled, now you actually have to have a real value proposition.
I spoke with a friend.
Oh my God.
I spoke with a friend at a different brokerage, and their brokerage basically said that in the agent remarks, they're just going to put some sort of notation when the owner's open to offering some sort of compensation to the buyer's agent.
Yeah, with very specific language.
Yeah, and I think what's going to happen is that's going to become customary where there's going to be listings that say something along the lines like, please submit buyer presentation offer or something like that.
No, or like with an acceptable purchase and sales agreement, the buyer, the seller is willing to offer concessions, like, and then just shut up. You know what I mean? It's something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And that's going to signal to the buyer's agents that there's going to be some sort of compensation being offered. I think what it's going to lead to is just going to lead to a lot more phone calls to the listing agents asking them if your listing is offering some sort of compensation. If your listing offers some sort of compensation, agents that didn't negotiate a commission up front are going to be more inclined to want to show your listing. And the ones that don't offer any sort of compensation, it will reduce some sort of traffic because not all of the agents are going to be able or willing to negotiate some sort of compensation on the buyer side, basically.
Agreed.
Which is just
if the listing agent starts to defend or is being like adversarial or all of that, like, okay, so I think there's two consequences of this. One, Jose said, and I used to be able to kind of do where if compensation's in there, truthfully, there's not much for us to talk about. Okay, make an offer, like, let's move forward, right? Well, now it's going to require more conversations with a listing agent. So you're either going to need staff to field those calls and have those conversations, and it might require more of your time as a listing agent. That's just a fact. Okay.
I'm hoping that it's by text message. That way, it's like even.
I think some of it will be text, but the other will be conversations. Now, the second.
I think it's going to be written. I think they're going to want it in writing, to be quite honest.
But I think, like, just like with anything else, like if you've been putting deals together, like what happens oftentimes in my professional experience, having sold 2,000 homes, we have a conversation first, then we can put in writing.
Yeah.
So I think that's like the way that it's done. And then the second level consequence. So the first is that you're going to have more conversations with people, right? But like the second level is the skill of negotiating is going to become more valuable. And truthfully, when compensation, when you know what you're going to be expecting, and when a marketplace is really solid, I want everybody to listen to me very closely. You do not have to be a skilled negotiator in those environments. You just don't. Like, tell me where, when you have multiple offers and you're just choosing the best one that is like, you know, the highest and has the best term. Like, is that negotiating, guys? No. That's easy peasy 1, 2, 3. So having emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, not having a big ego, understanding that my job is to put this together, not to keep it apart, and relationships. Here's the second level consequence. Relationships with other agents as a result. Relationships with other agents. If you get a reputation for being difficult to deal with, right? Being hard-nosed, being fucking, you know, just a challenge or an asshole or whatever, guys, it's gonna affect now more than ever. It actually makes it more important who people choose to work with. It just does. Because if everybody here, if I were to ask you, there's somebody in your town or a handful of people in town that are pains in the asses to deal with. Okay, when that happens in this environment, that's going to affect their buyers and sellers' ability to get offers accepted. It just will. So having like real, like strong relationships with other agents that aren't adversarial, that aren't me versus you, that's more collaborative, I think is going to become more valuable.
Well, I'll tell you this, even when I represent sellers, we do different commission structures based on different situations. So like, they'll be like, okay, well, what if you represent the buyer? Well, if I represent the buyer, the commission will be X. What if you sell it above the asking price? They'll be like, oh, well, if you sell it above the asking price, we'll give you X amount of bonus. I think it's going to be the same thing with buyers agents commissions, that we're just going to have to get good at different situational stuff. So it's going to be like, okay, what if the listing agent or the seller's offering 2.5 compensation? At that point, the compensation with the buyer get waived. What if they're not offering any sort of compensation? Does it become a blend at that point?
Yes.
Does it become like a blend, like 1% from the buyer and 2% from the seller? What if they're not offering anything at all? Is there like a minimum fee that you would take? I think that's what it's going to like lead to on the buyer side, but it's no different. It's going to be like, okay, well, look, this is the way that we work. We're going to put a lot of energy. We're going to put a lot of time. We're going to put a lot of effort in helping you find the right property. In other words, we're 100% committed to helping you find the right home. Now, the only thing that we ask in return is that same 100% commitment. So what we ask from you is we ask that same commitment. Now, in order for us to get our professional relationship started, it does require that we take care of some paperwork. The paperwork basically allows me to represent you on the purchase of your next property. Now, the fee for me to represent you is X. Now, this fee works in this different way. Like, sometimes the seller's agent will offer a compensation. If they offer some sort of compensation, that fee can be waived completely. If they don't offer some sort of compensation, then we would need to bridge that. But I'll let you know on every single property what they're offering in terms of compensation. If they don't offer any compensation, this is the minimum fee that I would be willing to take or whatever. Do you have any other questions before we go ahead and take care of the paperwork? Or something along those lines, basically. But it's no different on a listing. Like, I negotiate different situations in different times, and it's just a matter of being like, okay, and it's not going to be a one size fits all. At least I don't believe that. At least it's not like that for me on the listing side. On the listing side, it's okay. I got to a listing yesterday, and the seller goes, "Hey, Jose, is 6% still customary?" I'm like, yeah, it is. Right, we're good with that. Okay, perfect. They signed a listing agreement. So I think that there's going to be different people, and different people have different elasticities to or sensitivities to commission. Some people are just like, yeah, 6% is normal. Some people are like 5%. Some people are like 4%. I've had people that are like 3% if you represent the buyer. So it's going to be the same thing with buyers, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think, okay, so what I've been telling people for a long time is that I believe that our world that we live in is changing so rapidly and so quick with technology and rule changes and all this other stuff. There's two skills that are very, very important. The first is the ability to learn things very fast, or to get proximity to people who can learn things very fast. The second is a willingness to change your mind. That's very hard. Because when we think we're right about something, it gives us certainty, and we're so motivated by certainty, anything that we perceive to be new, we are fearful of it. But I'm telling you, your willingness to be flexible and change your mind, to provide options and choices. One of the reasons why Jose had such a strong year in 2023 is because he's willing to be flexible and provide options and choices. He's also known as the hyper-local expert in his geographic area. He has a lot of attention for that. You see what I'm saying? So based on circumstances, based on situations, he's also known as somebody who has a high level of integrity and will do the right things. So like all of that stuff culminates.
I'm also probably the most hated agent in Ventura County.
Which what I told him was like, dude, do you know why that is? He's like, why? I'm like, because you're the king. Everybody hates the fucking king. That's just the way it is. So like, and I told him because he has a little bit of sensitivity to that, and I don't. So I'm like, look, dude, that's going to keep happening, and it's fine, right? But that's why they hate the dominant agent. So, and then they will say things like, "Oh, he's not doing the right thing, or he's doing something unethical," which he's one of the most ethical people that I know. So, and that's fine. But like the point is being willing and flexible to change your mind. Change your mind about how things are done. And listen to me, the people who pivot, okay, when everybody's scared, okay, and everybody's shrinking. I watched this happen in 2020, 2021. Everybody got super scared. Everybody started to shrink. World's coming to an end. Fucking end of the world, the zombie apocalypse and shit. And I was hopping on calls with thunder and fucking brimstone, being like, guys, your genetics come from humans that lived in caves, okay? That fucking dealt with the stalking of disease, the stalking of hunger. Like other tribes showing up and killing everybody and taking all your shit. And they figured it out. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. That's where you come from. You are not made in the image of something that cowers with fear. You know what the number one repeated verse in the Bible is? Don't be afraid. Number one. You know what the number two verse in the most repeated verse in the Bible is? I am with you. Guys, like we can pivot and adapt. We used to pivot and adapt to lions and bears and tigers and floods and shit. Like, this is not like that at all. The only way that those genes come out is when you're challenged. That's the only way. So if anything, what I get pumped about, I'm like, bro, this is a challenge. What I was saying to people 2020, 2021, I'm like, listen to me. There are people right now in the marketplace, irregardless, which is a Miami word, it's not really a word, irregardless of what's happening externally, they have to fucking buy and sell. They have to. Your job is to go and find them. Look, don't sign up to be a firefighter and run away when there's a fire. Don't do that shit. That's weak. Can you imagine if the firefighters are like, oh, my bad, it's a fire. Like, I'm not really prepared for that. Oh, my bad, there's bad guys in there. And like Heath, who's in the SWAT team, is like, nope, I'm not going to go in because I'm scared. No, dude, that's not how it works. So, again, just like then, people who pivot and who adapt. You know how I pivoted? I was doing all my 30% of all the homes I listed were over the phone, and then that forced me to do it via video. And then you know what happened? It fucking stuck. I just kept doing listing presentations on video, and I didn't have to go to their damn house. I'm curious, is that a better thing than having to get all dressed up and drive out there? I could do them with my business on top and party fucking down below, wearing like underwear and shit. That's a positive thing. That was a great change. It helped me to recognize, oh shit, that was a limiting belief in my head. I could do this all the time. Homes would be like 25 minutes away, and I'll be like, yeah, we can do it via Zoom. I'll have a conversation with you. I'd present, send them the paperwork via DocuSign. I'd never see the house, guys. Never. So those who pivot, those who can remain calm, because emotions cloud logic. Those who can remain calm get proximity to people who are actual leaders, who lead, who do live streams immediately when it shows up, who hops on YouTube immediately when it shows up and starts to equip people, who spends time reading all of the rule changes, who spends time doing all this stuff that can equip you, not only with what's going on, but the tactile information. Those who do that don't succumb to fear. Guys, they will get the more of the business. Because per person productivity should go up. Because get all the part-time agents, where are they going? Gone. You see what I'm saying? Like per person productivity should go up. And things can either happen to you or they can happen for you. Okay, there's different levels of consciousness. One consciousness is is happening to me. That's victim consciousness. And I see 95% of people spend 98% of their time in that form of consciousness. The second form of consciousness is by me, meaning like I co-create with my external environment. If it's to be, it's up to me. Instead of asking, how is this happening to me? How is this happening for me? Have I got this thing? Is this providing me the opportunity to increase my skill level? Is this providing me the opportunity to level up? Is this providing me the opportunity to get market share? Like, how is this equipping me for the next chapter, for the next verse, for the next thing? And you get to choose which one you want to participate in. And if you got to choose, I might as well choose the one that's more empowering, not disempowering.
Mic drop. All right. Any last questions, insights, comments, yeah buts for Aaron?
The only thing I would say too is I would propose as agents that instead of putting a buyer concession on the MLS, that we just put in the agent remarks that to submit with acceptance of an offer, that to reach out to us for some sort of not compensation, but how did Aaron say it? Some sort of I don't know the actual word.
Yeah, like with an acceptable offer, the seller is open to or willing to provide a concession of some sort, and then just be quiet. Shut the fuck up.
Concession. Now, the reason I would advise or I would propose that for agents is I think that if you guys start offering the buyers a closing cost credit or a concession up front, they're gonna basically very few of them are gonna be like, why would I give up a 3% credit and give that to my agent instead of commission? They're gonna be like, well, I'll just take that 3% credit and I'll use it for my own closing costs or whatever. That's my personal belief. So I think that the way of just kind of putting it in the private remarks is a much better way, and then you're not basically like accustoming people to advertising certain concessions on the MLS, basically.
Yeah, I think that's solid advice. And then I think too, guys, I don't know why. Actually, I do know why, because some of the biggest voices and coaches and everything have kind of like made it this like kind of cultural thing amongst agents where it's like it's me versus you. It's listing agents versus buyers agents. Like buyers agents ain't shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm the man and you're not. And like all this, or I'm the woman and you're not, which is fucking dumb. Collaboration is the new currency, guys. Like you're gonna like work with other people. Make it easy to work with you. You know what I'm saying? Like work together as a team to put something
together. If you're a
together.
listing agent, try to get the buyer's agent some sort of compensation, you know?
Right. And I can just imagine it's like, look, you know, we're really excited to work with you and I'm going to have a conversation with them. I also want you to be aware my intention in having that conversation with them is to, you know, make it clear to them and educate them on the economics and compensation and how it, you know, how all that works. So, you know, our job is to put this together, not to keep it apart. So let's work together as a team to make this happen. Like that's collaborative. Not like, hey, make me an offer and fucking I'll get back to you in 72 hours if I feel like it. Like that's, you know what I mean? It's not going to work anymore.
Last question here. Does this present a greater opportunity to turn a FSBO to paying seller versus buyer?
I don't know, bro. Like what I think is we've been working with FSBOs in this capacity forever, which is like, hey, are you willing to offer compensation if an agent brings you? Listen, this is a perfect example to end on, okay? This encapsulates the fact that this is not that big of a change. Because when working with FSBOs, you'd be like, hey, you know, if an agent like myself brings you a buyer, would you be willing to compensate them in some way? And they would be like, sure, I'll pay you X%. No? And you're like, okay, well, that's very generous. I appreciate that. And then you have a conversation. It's like, well, you know, I'm wondering, if you knew that there was another way that you could get this home sold and you could just outsource all of it to another agent, you can net what you wanted, is that something you'd be interested in? Sure. And then what you would do, go over there and negotiate a fucking professional fee. Guys, listen to me. This is not that different than what we've already been doing. The sensationalism of the media and the fact that they do clickbaity shit to try to scare people, to try to get them into fear mode. Like it's just more emotional than it is logical. If you pull out the emotion, you're like, oh yeah, we do this with FSBOs all the time. Oh yeah. Like I go in with a seller and I go and give a presentation. I tell them the value that I bring and I ask them for compensation and I negotiate with them. Oh yeah, we've been doing this shit forever. You know what I mean? Like you just realize like, oh, okay. This is not that much different. So, you know, keep a clear head. Knowledge equals confidence. Ignorance equals fear. Get better at presenting your value proposition. Understand you're going to have to list buyers the same way you list sellers, which I don't think is a bad thing. Understand that you have to have a demonstrated value proposition, not like, I'm worth it, damn it. Not like this entitlement bullshit, because that ain't going to cut it. And yeah, bro, like you will do just associate with people that like truly lead, that can give you the tactical information that you need so you can continue to, you know, advance your business career and you'll be fine, guys. Fine.
Guys, you will be fine. It's all up here. Don't be emotional, be logical in this. And if you found this valuable, share it with a friend and come back here next week. We'll give you more value. All right, guys, make it a great day. Any last insight for the audience? Aaron, Jose.
Yeah, again, don't be afraid. I'm with you. Let's go.
It's a good time to steal market share. Aaron, if you think about it, the buyer has always paid for the commission through over asking. The sellers never really paid for it, ever.
Yeah. Again, like if we really break it down, we could get into the weeds. Like by simplifying it, I think that like really helps is like when you really separate the emotion from like what's really going on, guys, this is just like, it's like a detour. Like imagine like you were going to go, yeah. Okay. So all of us use like Google Maps, right? And there's two ways to get to a place. One is like the highway, you got to pay a toll. It's like fucking 5 minutes quicker. And the other one is like the free shit, which is like I-95, right? Yeah. Well, that's all this is, bro. It's just like, we'll get to the same place, but it just takes a little bit, like takes another conversation. That's all it is, guys. It's not like this, like, oh, we're fucking going to disappear and like blah, blah, blah. Because here's the thing, okay? Consumers ultimately get what they want. And they still want us involved because what consumers have said is, no, we don't want to sell our homes to Zillow. No, we don't want to fucking do the open door thing. No, we don't. Like they've spoken very clear. That's not what they want. What they want is they want a highly skilled person who can explain to them the economics, who can demonstrate value, solve problems for them, because it's the biggest transaction they're ever going to do in their life. They just perhaps don't want to pay us as much. They still want us involved, though. And what made sense 50 years ago when homes were $100,000, maybe it doesn't make sense when the average purchase sales price is $700,000. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, yeah, that is logical. I understand it. So I think those who pivot, again, you're going to get to the same place perhaps with GCI. It'll just be with like perhaps a little detour. So some of them might be like a flat rate thing for people that just call and you work with them once. Some of them might be like Jose said, is it still customary? Yeah, this is what it is. Great. Awesome. Some of them might, you see what I'm saying? It's just a decoupling of how it's
still market. Still market share. There's gonna be a lot of agents that are not going to be willing.
Oh yeah, 100%. Where they don't even have the capacity or the will or the mental strength. Yeah, guys, look. Okay, I sold real estate when the financial world imploded.
Damn.
Huge financial institutions fucking went out of business. The marketplace was going down like 20-30% price per year. 50% of all the homes that were on the market for sale were foreclosures. I did 0 foreclosures, 0 short sales, and I grew by 25% year over year. And when we came out of that, I was doing 100 fucking deals a year. Guys.
That's strong. Fuck.
Of course. Hey. The market, like, you have to make a decision. Do you co-create with the market? Do you co-create with experience? Or are you a victim of it? Let's go.
There's a lot.
Peace.
Yeah. Peace.